Welcome to Title Adam in the House, the podcast where Florida real estate gets real. Buyers, sellers, builders, lenders. If you're in the game, then you belong in the house. Let's get you to the closing table faster and with less stress. Let's go. Hey, everybody, it's Title Adam. I'm in the house today. Thanks for joining me. We're coming from the sunny studios at Premier Reputation Title in Estero. I'd love to have you join us here. The link is guest.titleadam.com. Today, I've got my buddy Mike Steele in the studio today, MikeSteeleLoans.com. He's a mortgage broker here locally. He's a friend of mine, and he's in the house. Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, thanks for coming in, man. We've had a chance to chat a little bit before the show, and we said we got to get the mics going. We're losing great content here, and part of what I'm trying to do with Title Adam in the House is to bring some content to people that is relevant, and that whether they're a real estate professional, a mortgage lender, a fellow title agent, insurance agent, whatever they may be, or more importantly, the end consumer. I want them to have something that they can take away from this that they don't get on every other podcast. And I know everybody has a podcast today. It's the hot thing to do. So thanks for being here with me, Mike. And I want to jump right in and just talk a little bit about what's going on. Now, I live and love in Lehigh Acres. And so yesterday I spent some time with a guest really talking about the market out there. And as a title insurance agent, I'm licensed in the state of Florida. But every market is a little bit different. And so I wanted to get a little bit deeper into your neck of the woods, which is Cape Coral, where you're at. So I would just ask you anecdotally, how's it looking in Cape Coral today?
I personally think it's looking great. There are lots of homes for sale, a lot of opportunities for people. And as much as people were concerned about Ian, if you drove around Cape Coral, the hurricane is over. I mean, you don't see too many roofs that haven't been repaired or anything like that. It's Cape Coral. I always tell people it's the biggest small town you'll ever get to go to. It's a great area to live. The market is slower because of insurance, I think, but I think the opportunities are great. During COVID, you couldn't hardly buy a home less than $300,000, and now there's homes less than $300,000 that you.
Cape Coral, though, is a great small town. They've got a ton of restaurants, bars, parks that are just awesome. They've got the Seven Islands project going out there on the west of the Cape. And then you've got access to Matlacha and Pine Island and all the great stuff that comes with that. Some fantastic boating. You're just outside of Sanibel Island. Mike, why is Cape Coral the stepchild right now in the news? Like every article that I'm reading, every snippet that I hear right now talks about if you're buying real estate, don't buy it in Florida. And if you're buying it in Florida, don't buy it in Cape Coral. What is good? What is that?
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about taxes, insurance, flood insurance. And I think that leads people to be worried. I think Hurricane Ian scared a lot of people because it sat over Cape Coral for so long. But if you drove around Cape Coral now, you would see a lot of new construction being done. You wouldn't see that much damage from Hurricane Ian. And I even think some of the news media telling people how high insurance costs are, I do believe they're high. I think with more insurance companies coming into our area, that's going to help. But I don't think they're as high as people think. I've seen reports where people are paying $8,000, $9,000 a year for insurance. And that's just not the average.
That's the outlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that has people scared. Flood insurance also has people scared, but there's so many people that already have flood insurance, and you can assume that flood insurance when you're purchasing a home, so you get that lower.
And does that rate, that's grandfathered then and doesn't change?
No, it does. It will change over time.
Okay, but you're not necessarily going to have that sticker shock when
Correct.
you initially bring it on.
Correct.
And, Lehigh Acres, that's another thing I love about it, so I'm going to plug it. Highest elevation in Lee County, and we don't have flood insurance out there, although there are areas that will flood, from the Orange River and from Greenbrier is a pretty wet area as well. But okay, so going back over to the Cape, I'd like to cue up a clip that we have Karen Borelli, who's the president of Royal Palm Coast Realtor Association, and she was asked about what's going on in the Cape.
It portrays a picture of Cape Coral being in distress when it's not. And then we had a hurricane, and our market still sustained, mostly from people losing their homes and purchasing homes.
And she's carrying the exact same message that you are, Mike, which is, listen, there's not the blue tarps everywhere in the Cape. We've made progress since Ian. That was 3 years ago. And we're largely recovered from there. And yet the media continues to talk about things that are in the rearview mirror. And so that's interesting, though, because we know that the media actually fuels buyer sentiment, seller sentiment, and we kind of rely on that to know if it's hot or cold right now. But they've said that there's proof in the pudding. And so I pulled a little bit of data and just to get an idea of what's really going on a micro level in the Cape. And without looking really from a historical standpoint, but looking more just at a snapshot in time, in Cape Coral, there are right now 979 homes that are available to rent on a monthly basis. And that tells me that of the 979 that are available to rent, Mike, 160 are showing as monthly rentals. And that tells me that roughly 819 of those 979 are seasonal rental, maybe a huge Airbnb pocket that's waiting to bust, a bubble that's waiting to bust out in the Cape that Lehigh Acres doesn't have. I don't think that there's a ton of Airbnbs in the Lehigh Acres because we don't have Gulf access or navigable canals, which the Cape does. But I know a lot of people picked up Airbnbs in the Cape and they said, I can rent these out and make a fortune off of them. And if they didn't have the right advice legally, they might have put themselves in a precarious tax situation doing it. And I really just wonder, the Airbnb, I want to come back to that, but let's talk about that. There's 979 rentals in Lee Coral, and they are averaging 1,548 square feet, $2,200 a month. That is not what I would take out of the articles and the headlines that I'm hearing about Cape Coral. Everything I'm hearing is that the cost is through the roof, and that there's a ton of vacant houses everywhere you look, and it's not a good place to be. But I just said almost 1,600 square feet for $2,200 a month. That's not bad rent anywhere, but especially in Cape Coral. Now that's going to take in, that's condos in there with big homes and everything like that. But just looking at it like that, that gives me something to think about, because if I wanted to rent one of these homes at $2,200 a month, just assuming it's first, last, and security, which some landlords are more eager to let you in. But let's just say it was first, last, and security. So I'd be putting down $6,600 to get into the home and to have a roof over my head and to provide for my family and have security. That seems really realistic, even though the economy is shaky.
Well, and fear sells in the news media, and that is a big issue. They're trying to just sell a story and not the actual, what's it like to live in Cape Coral or in Southwest Florida overall.
Who wins, though? When they're selling, what is it selling? Just fear.
Ratings. Yeah.
Yeah,
ratings and fear.
Yeah.
You even see,
the buyers aren't winning and the sellers aren't winning at the end of the day.
You even see that on social media. And you see so many people afraid to buy right now because they think prices are going to go down. Well, they could. Mm-hmm. We don't know. But if you're a buyer, you should be out there looking to see what you want. During COVID was an insane time where people were paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over the appraised value just to purchase a home. And if you were financing a home, you had very little chance of even having the opportunity.
You weren't competitive.
So now you have that opportunity. You don't have to make a rush decision. I have a client right now, we're going into the 4th week of them out looking at homes. And they've looked, from the realtor told me, they've looked at 35 to 40 homes.
Wow.
They have time. They're waiting to buy the home they want.
So that buyer that you're talking about, though, would they hop right off the fence if rates went down a quarter today? Is that do they need the rate to improve in a short window, or they have so much to look at that
they have enough to look at and they have time.
Yeah. That drives realtors crazy, man.
Yes.
God.
And you're not going to see, you could see, we've seen rate movements of 0.25% in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that's going to affect anyone. We have seen the rates come down, which is good. They're not going to come down to what people want them to.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But why not be out there making lower offers on homes?
Yeah.
Because we all know that homes during COVID went up way too much. It was unrealistic. It should have never happened. Unfortunately, the government intervened with interest rates and forced them lower, and that
hmm
caused a lot of the issues that we have today.
And during COVID, all of a sudden you don't care how close you are to your office because you're telecommuting and you're
Right.
told that it's basically, you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's old school. We don't do that anymore. We're decentralized. And I know that I did some decentralized work myself. And then I like to wake up, dress up, and show up. I like to come into an office every day. And so I would make that drive. But I know a lot of people chose where they lived based on the fact that they didn't have to commute to an office and that they could do it from home. So that's a tough situation when that tide turns and now all of a sudden it's time to go back to work and your commute's an hour and 25 minutes and
Yeah.
you're not happy doing it, but you've got to do it because now you've committed to financial obligation. MikeSteeleLoans.com. Mike's a broker, a mortgage broker. And so he's got different options that he can help place that loan. But one thing that I really value about Mike, and one of the reasons I asked you to come into the house is because it's not this sunny, overconfident, over enthusiastic about where the market's going to be. I mean, like you said yourself, rates may come down a little bit. Are they going to come down a lot? No. And I think that a lot of mortgage loan officers right now, just from what I'm seeing and talking about, are managing large pipelines of looky-loos that are constantly asking about rate and constantly scared to commit to a rate because they feel like as soon as they do, then the rate will come down. And then they're managing a pipeline of buyers that almost qualify for the loan, but they don't quite. And they need the rate to come down literally 1/8% and get the auto pay discount on the homeowner's insurance and, everything to come together. And I like to hear you say, let's just, let's look at the scenario. So it sounds like though you are not selling the dream that, hey, rates may pop down to 4% and you'll be able to do, you're just saying,
No,
take
'cause-
it as it is today.
Yeah,
And
I don't think they'll ever go down. Well, and I've said that throughout my 30-year career that they'll ever go down that low again. Biggest thing I want people to understand is what their mortgage payment is and be comfortable with that payment. The sales price of the house is secondary. You need to make sure that you're comfortable with principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, any HOA dues that you may have to pay, and looking to the future because we know that your principal and interest payment will never go up, but your taxes and insurance are going to go up. Your HOA dues are going to go up. And I see too many people that are purchasing, and yes, they may fit into that payment today with a high debt ratio,
Mhm.
but next year, when those property taxes are reassessed or their insurance goes up by 2%, then they're in financial trouble. And it's all because they're looking at the sales price of the house and not what the payment on that house is going to be.
That's why sometimes when I hear the saying date the rate, I kind of grit my teeth a little bit because the rate's only a part of it. You've got the brother and sister and the mother that are there, the PMI, the taxes, the HOI. And that's tough, man. And like you said, it's more about, it almost is like going to buy a car where they say, well, what are you comfortable with paying? And then backing into that number versus saying, I need a $450,000 house. And I just need you to make it work.
And I have those clients.
Yeah.
I've had first-time home buyers that have told me I can't find a home for less than $500,000 because I have to have granite countertops. I have to have this. I have to have that. And I'm like, no, you don't have to have those things.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's your first home, it's not your forever home, most likely.
There's a lot of people that have an opinion. They almost would take offense to that, where it's like, hey, you haven't earned it yet. You're going to get the melamine, countertops and the terrible thermofoil cabinets that peel off first, and then you're going to work your way up. Your starter home is supposed to be a starter home, but a lot of people's taste is just that they walk through a new construction. The new construction models decked out to the nines with builder upgrades that are not in the base price, and then they take that and they ask their realtor to find them a resale product that's similar.
Right. And I always tell people, like, if you're living in the home, it's not an investment. It is, eventually it will be an asset for you. But right now, if it's your primary residence, it's a place to live.
Yeah, if you didn't have that, you'd be renting a hotel room every
Correct.
night.
Yeah, you're going to pay somebody's mortgage. You're either going to pay your own or you're going to pay your landlord's.
Yeah.
But no matter what, you're going to pay one of them. But people keep looking at their home as an investment, and it's just not an investment. It's not going to make any money till you sell it.
And you got to feed it.
Yeah. So as long as you focus on this is where I live and this is my primary residence that I get to do whatever I want with,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they should be looking at and not saying, oh, okay, well, I want to buy this house because in 3 years I want to make $100,000 on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mistake that people are making.
But then to say that it is an asset, an eventual asset, but not an investment, and I want to get into this, is, the access of home equity, whether it's through a HELOC that a lot of people are trying to set up now, or if it's through a cash out refinance. And then, the whole behavior that comes with that of, constantly cash out refinancing, constantly taking out money.
Yeah. So your house is not a piggy bank.
Right.
And I can tell you back in the 90s, I used to do a lot of second mortgages up to 125% of the home's value.
Yep.
Those were extraordinarily popular. I thought they were a fantastic idea initially because I was in a lot of credit card debt in my previous life when I was much younger. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity for people to get out of debt. So I did a lot of those loans. And what I found is that after 6 months, those same people were coming back to me looking to get another debt consolidation loan. And it's because they haven't cured the issue that they had. And if you have credit card debt, if you have a lot of consumer debt, depending on the amount that you have an addiction. And that's the problem.
I'll tell you what happens, and I know this from personal experience. You pay those credit cards off, your score goes up, you're going to get more credit. And if you haven't fixed the issue, you're going to find yourself right back in debt when now you have because I would say I sold home equities as well. And I used to sell them like a madman because I would tell them, it's less interest than a credit card. You may have tax deductibility that you wouldn't have otherwise. You got a fixed payment if it's a loan, if it's a line of credit, you're paying interest only. Like this is you investing in yourself. But you made a really great point because your credit picture improves and now they want to give you more.
Yeah, and I always tell people and I'm not against home equity lines of credit or debt consolidation loans. I think they have their place. But until you have functioned on cash for 6 months, I wouldn't get one. Because you've got to learn to only use cash, because if you don't, you will go back in debt.
So do you think in that scenario, Mike, that the risk is that the person is going to deplete their equity and, diminish the value of their asset? Or is it that they're going to put themselves in a monthly obligation? Which one do you think is the bigger risk? I guess it depends on the person. But
yeah, it depends on the person, but they will put themselves, they're going to be married to their home.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to do anything. And the problem comes if you miss your rent payment, really, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. You start missing your mortgage payment, not only are the late fees on a mortgage payment so much higher than anything else, but you miss a couple of payments and they're going to take your home.
And you start getting legal notices taped to your door and people showing up to your work.
You're in big trouble.
Yeah.
But, I see that with car loans right now. The average new car payment is over $700 a month. And I see people all the time that, they have 2 brand new cars in their driveway. And I'm like, what? It's a car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild because that's the payment for the car, but that's not the insurance. That's not the fuel cost. So it's well over $1,000 on that. I drive a lot for work and I know that, and I drive a little Ford Fusion and it gets 39 miles to the gallon, which I love. But I got to tell you, Mike, my payment on that's almost $400 a month.
I know a long time ago, I had somebody, I used to drive very nice cars when I started out in this business. And one of my friends, I showed him my Lexus and I was like, I'm so proud of this and look at it. He looked at me and said, who are you trying to impress? And that hit me like a ton of bricks.
Well, when I was selling real estate, I drove a Lexus because I wanted to impress the person that had real estate to sell.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to say, well, he must be doing pretty good because he's driving a Lexus.
Yeah, and that's not saying that you shouldn't buy a Lexus or a BMW or whatever you
want.
No
hate, yeah.
But don't try to impress other people. Just like with your house, don't try to keep up with your neighbors and try to impress somebody. Buy something that you can afford.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about buying small And, if you can either buy small and nice, or you can buy big and need to do a little work on it. But if you're a first time home buyer, now I'm almost 45. I'm ready to tell people, listen, buy a small place that doesn't need work on it if it's your first place, and then get used to being a homeowner, because the people leave the closing table as a first time homeowner in a daze. They don't even realize you got to stop and buy a trash can, dude, before you even get home. You need garbage bags.
I actually just did a video. I haven't edited it yet. Is one of the biggest mistakes that first time home buyers make is they go shopping after they bought their home.
Yeah.
And they think that they need.
No, you're saying after they close, or
after they
okay,
close.
so they're through the loan, they've got it.
They've got everything, they're all set up. First thing they do is go shopping for their home. And that's just a huge mistake, because you've got to distinguish between what your wants and your needs are.
Yeah.
And then wait to buy stuff until you've been in that home and you see what it's like, and you can buy nicer things instead of buying something to get you by.
Yeah.
Because those things that just get you by are what's at the garage sale down the road, a year later.
Buy nice or buy twice.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that idea. Even with, furniture, if you were, say you were buying a place and you didn't have furniture that you were bringing in, I kind of like the idea of, getting into the spot for a little bit, and kind of, like you said, maybe you would buy a different dining table if you, really looked at the space and how you used it and everything. So that's good info. Yeah. I just feel like, oh, you can get that at Home Depot and take care of that. No problem. All your friends and family, when you're buying a home, they come, during the inspection period or whatever, and they're telling you, no problem, we can knock that out. And then you close and you're on your own. Yeah. And you're at Home Depot begging some guy that doesn't want to give you advice, and you're begging him to tell you how to fix a P-trap on a sink or something. And I think that a lot of people are going to look, if we see a housing downturn, they're going to look to go in and maybe update homes. And maybe that's through renovation lending, or maybe it's through whatever. And I just think that you've got some rose-colored glasses if you think you're going to buy a fixer-upper as a first-time homeowner, not understanding really just the vibe of being a homeowner. You got to cut your grass down here, it turns out, in the summertime.
Yeah,
or pay somebody.
I could tell you from experience, I spent 20 plus years in a condo and never had to do anything.
That's
and
nice.
Then 6 years ago, I bought a house. And I was like, well, what garbage can do I use?
Yeah.
Who's mowing my lawn?
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things that you never think of. Thankfully, I have two sons that can do stuff, because I don't do stuff.
Yeah.
I have a lot of plants.
Yeah.
I can take care of those.
Yeah.
But, anything that has to do with fixing up a home, or, simple things like putting doorknobs on cupboards and stuff, I'm just not good at.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think of all of those things when you're purchasing a home.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times, and I love my real estate agents that I work with, love all real estate agents. If you're buying, selling, building, refinancing, or doing a deal in Florida, tag in Title Adam, because I'm here to help you get to that closing table faster and with less stress. But I think a lot of real estate agents don't really look. They want to sell. They want to put a contract together, buyer to seller, get to a closing table, and move on.
Yeah.
And they're not really thinking at the end of the day, are you good at mowing grass? Do you like to weed eat? Like, they're not really thinking about that. They're looking for you to think about that and let them help guide you into the right property once you give them the right information. So, for first-time home buyers, I get scared of HOA fees for a first-time home buyer just because they can go up. But I know that a lot of the responsibility of being a homeowner is handled efficiently through an HOA.
Yeah, and it's really making sure that you understand, even if you're buying a condo in Florida. We've all heard the news about condos and how horrible they are. Well, you've got to look at the financials of the condo and how stable are they? What are the HOA dues going for? I've seen a lot of videos on TikTok and stuff and just bashing Florida for HOAs and how horrible they are. And I'm like, well, they're not, because they cover things that you would have to do depending on where the lifestyle that you want to live.
Yeah, there's so we're in Estero off of Corkscrew Road, and nearby is a community I know many years ago I sold in called Villaggio. And Villaggio had, some people said high HOA fees. They might have been $500 a month. I don't know. But if you go into Villaggio, 1, it's gated, it's secured. 2, there's a town center inside of Villaggio where they have an ice cream parlor, they have a movie theater, they have pools, they have grilling areas, they have a bagel shop or some kind of like little little snack shop there. And so you go, well, what do you want, man? You wouldn't get that for $500 out a la carte. But what scares me about the HOA for a first time home buyer is that there's a lot of fraud and a lot of mismanagement on those boards where all of a sudden there's assessments and fees where they didn't plan properly. So to that point, maybe an HOA where it's a stripped down, it's a condo in the Cape with a boat dock and a pool, and they take care of the landscaping, they take care of the pest control, your water's included, and your insurance, which is a big one.
Yeah, and those are simple things to check before you ever buy. Check to see, even if you're buying a single family residence, how old is the roof? How old is the air conditioning system? How old is the water heater? Because those are big ticket items after you move in.
Yeah. A lot of people moving though, coming from condo to home, don't think about that as much, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. So I look at that and really going back to the HOA fee and what it includes. A lot of people will go from a condo to a single family home and they'll go, oh God, I got to pay for my own cable and internet. Oh my gosh, that's $196 or whatever.
Guilty.
So there are things, water bill, trash service. There are a lot of things. And so, maybe it is something to do. And I think that there's certainly more HOAs in the Cape than there are in Lehigh, but the Cape's not a big HOA.
It's not
land.
But if you go around a neighborhood that has an HOA, it's going to be clean, manicured, all of that. You walk around certain areas of the Cape and you walk by a gas station and, there's trash outside the gas station that nobody's picked up, or even at Walmart or Publix, any of those stores, you're not paying for an HOA, but you're going to have that because people are people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. MikeSteeleLoans.com. He's a mortgage broker here locally and just absolutely crushing it. He's got two boys, and they live down here in Southwest Florida with him. Jonathan's the oldest, and he's actually a mortgage lender himself. I follow him on TikTok and would love to bring him in the house sometime for a chat because he's got some fresh content that he's doing. And I wanted to mention that when I reached out to him, I said, is Mike Steele your dad? He said, yes, he is. And I said,
he's got the younger point of view.
And he's definitely embracing technology for his content creation. And he's it seems like a really nice guy. I can't wait to meet him. And apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Mike. So you can tell he's a nice guy. And then you have another son, Matthew, who is a firefighter in Lehigh. So that's awesome. And so you've got your unit down here with you while you're in the, good. So Jonathan is someone who came up seeing you in mortgage because you've been doing mortgage for some time. But let's go back a little bit further just to give a flavor for who we're dealing with when we're talking about Mike Steele. I know that Kansas was a home base, and then you came to Florida when you were 11, but ended up back in Kansas. And when you got there, you said what?
So I grew up in Florida, and then I left Florida, moved to Kansas. And then came back to Florida once my youngest son graduated from high school.
You said, "Oh, wait,"
because ultimately I don't do cold weather at all. I like the sunshine. I like being outside. So when my youngest son graduated high school, I left the following day after he graduated. And thankfully, both my sons came down here with their wives and my grandkids.
Yeah, I see you. I see you loving life with your grandkids here too. It's good to have your family here with you. And like I said, we live where people spend their hard-earned money and their vacation time coming to where we spend every single day. The traffic that we sometimes maybe complain about is like awesome to be in when you're in vacation. You're just watching everything around. And I don't know if you noticed when you pulled into our office here, by the way, the absolute showroom of cars out front. There's the Mercedes, there's Ferrari, there was a Lambo the other day. I don't know what the guys upstairs do, but I'm looking forward to the day I make it upstairs because I'm driving the Ford Fusion. And I don't know if they have those big payments that we're talking about, Mike. I'm not sure. So you ended up back in Florida though, and before mortgage, you were really looking more into culinary arts.
So I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in New York.
That's awesome.
In 1986, I got a job in Key West So I drove from New York down to Key West, and the entire time I was on the bridge out to the island of Key West, I kept thinking, if something happens to this bridge, I'm stuck. And by the time I got to Key West, I had worked myself into such a panic that I never showed up for my job.
Yeah.
I turned around, drove to Fort Myers, and just fell in love with Fort Myers. Got a job at the Ritz-Carlton on the beach in Naples. And yeah, I stayed here until I ended up finding a job in Kansas and drove out to Kansas and then spent 20 years out there.
And how did you like your time at Ritz-Carlton? Because I knew someone that worked at the one down in Naples, and they worked in the spa, and they said that Ritz-Carlton is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And you're very warm and welcoming. I could see that fitting into your personality, kind of that Midwest, real personable. How did you like working for the Ritz? Did you find that to be was it too much at the time, or did you find that was, that level of service aligned with?
Obviously, I was much younger.
Yeah, sure.
At the time, overall I enjoyed it. I also worked for a catering company at the same time down here in Naples. I believe it was called Cuisine Management. So I worked for both of them simultaneously.
And do you remember? We're going way back in time, but do you remember what rent would have been back then? You said you got a condo in Fort Myers when you came from the Keys.
Yeah, so I lived in an apartment in Fort Myers, and I want to say that it was $300 or $400 a month.
Split with anybody, or you had your own place?
I actually had a roommate.
So 3 apiece, or it was 300 to 400.
Split 300 to 400 total, I think.
Okay,
Between both
yeah, that sounds good. Those are the good old days.
Yeah. But I mean, at that time, 41 was just a 2-lane road.
Yeah. I actually moved to Bonita in '86. Is that when you said you came over here? Yeah. Okay. So I lived in Bonita on the Imperial River, and so it was just a totally different world. North Naples, in particular, was just a 2-lane road going.
Yeah, there was
down.
No stoplights on 41. The only time that you stopped is if there was an alligator laying in the road.
Yeah. Was that Immokalee Road where Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and all of them used to actually hunt like black bear out there, where what is now like Immokalee and 41? That was so that was obviously before you and I were here. We're a little bit younger than Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, thank gosh. But so anyway, so you moved from the culinary, and that was something that suited you when you were younger. You were the young Bourdain, if you will. And then you decided, though, I want to get into mortgage.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're in food service, you work a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And it really was not conducive to have a young family, at least from my standpoint. The opportunity came up for me to get into mortgages, so I did. And at the time, back in, that would have been around 1995, the subprime loans, the true subprime loans were just coming to age, and I was really a master at those. I was the only one in my area that did them. Realtors knew if they had a deal that couldn't get done, I could get it done. Times were so much different then. So I started doing strictly subprime loans. And then in 1998...
Who were you doing the subprime through at that time?
WMC, First Plus.
I know Wells Fargo was big.
First.
They had a subprime division that was writing a ton of business.
So I mean, it was definitely the Wild West then.
Yeah.
And then in 1998, most of those companies went under. I mean, it was the first fall of the subprime business. And I was, I had loans, and at that time you had to photocopy the entire package. You had to send it to the underwriters and everything. All these companies were closing where I had loans. And I ended up getting out of the subprime loans completely in 1998 and went into just conventional loans, basically. And at that time, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac really wanted to get a piece of that pie. So after they invented the automated underwriting system, basically, that we have now, credit scores had just come out. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would have loan level loans. So you had an approved eligible 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yep.
So I got hooked up with conventional lenders that were willing to do those different levels. And you didn't have to do subprime loans, and you could give your clients such better deals.
It was an A client that had been dragged into subprime.
You could get into those 30-year fixed instead of having loans that were fixed for 2 years or 3 years and then went to an adjustable rate. Automated underwriting was one of the best things that happened to our industry.
Oh yeah,
because it took out the human feeling. Because initially, if you had a 30-day late on a credit card in the last 12 months, you were not getting a loan.
Yeah.
If you were late on your mortgage in the last 2 years, you were not getting.
It was a grid, right? And it said,
so
0 times 30.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out with automated underwriting, it changed the game completely for people and really gave them a better deal. So yeah, that got me completely out of doing subprime loans. And I really stuck into that, and then net branches. I don't know if you remember those. Most of the modern mortgage companies that we have, their roots come from being a net branch.
Mm-hmm.
And I had joined a net branch, which gave me the opportunity to do FHA and VA loans.
There you go.
So, I've been doing those for 25 years. And even then, it was so different because nobody knew what the guidelines were. You've been in the business long enough to where we used to carry around Fannie Mae's book of guidelines. And if you disputed,
you could quote it.
Yeah. If you disputed anything with the underwriter, you scanned a copy of it and then faxed it to them. So you say, this is the guideline that I'm using. Yeah. So things were so much different. And automated underwriting has changed the industry for the better.
Yeah.
There are things that aren't better because common sense is no longer in our industry, where you can't tell an underwriter, hey, this doesn't make common sense. This person has $500,000 in assets. He has nothing to do with why we had the downfall in 2008 and stuff like that. So, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I remember working so I originated my first loan in 98. I got in right out of high school. And I worked for a small community bank to kind of get my teeth cut, and then was quickly recruited by Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo at the time was working with a system like you're talking about, where I actually had a setup where I would call in a loan application over the phone to Wells Fargo in Maryland. I would give them the information over the telephone. The guy would type it in. He would run it, and it would come back with what they call a stream, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a level. And if you got a stream 1, it's not going anywhere. It's dead. Stream 2 meant like it's going to have a heavy underwriting review. We'll get back to you and let you know. Stream 3 meant full doc. Stream 4 meant like reduced doc. Stream 5, if you got a stream 5, it was a no doc, baby. There was nothing you needed except the appraisal.
Yeah.
And I can remember going to nice hotels with leaders of leaders standing up and saying, we need to work until we get the Stream 5 approval on our deals. And we said, well, what does that mean? Well, you can't change their credit score unless you do a rapid rescore. So if you couldn't change your credit score, what else could you do what could you do? Maybe if their income was higher, maybe if they thought they had more in their bank account, that could help. And then just basically, Mike, just, like I said, not trying to get anybody in trouble, but I can remember them saying, this is the way that it goes. If we get the computer to say this, we can do this, and then we'll pay you this. And so they were telling you, basically inflate those numbers. If they've got the credit profile that would stand up to a Stream 5, go ahead and run it 10 times until you get it to give you what you want. And gosh, should have known that was wrong.
For sure, there was definitely ways to manipulate the system. And
I don't even know if Freddie had a problem with that though back then, because it was just kind of like it fits in the box that we can sell.
Correct. And, and even Countrywide, when they were doing their fast and easy loan, and you ran it through the system, and you typically had to get the front page of a bank statement and a paycheck stub, and you could close.
Yeah.
You usually got appraisal waivers at the time.
Yeah.
But obviously the system was young. People didn't even know what was going on. And, now it's a lot different. We even look at income far different than we used to look at it.
I can remember going to underwriters in that 98 to '08 time frame and being the passionate, you can't handle the truth and really wanting to fight on a deal and fight for that customer. And I always put it in the name of customer service, but I'm sure I wanted to feed myself as well. And I can remember going and really being able to make a compelling argument and, like working my voice on the phone with them, schmoozing them a little bit, trying to ask them, haven't you ever had a medical bill that, you forgot to pay on, and like really and getting it. And now I don't know, because I'm out of the mortgage industry. Can you do that anymore, or is it not?
That was really a big deal with FHA loans, because when I started doing FHA loans 25 years ago, we told people they are the story loan.
Right.
So
compensating factors.
You want to sit there and tell that underwriter a story of why they should get the loan, because then credit scores were so new, they really didn't impact loans as much as they do now. So you were telling the story on that FHA loan to get it to the closing table. And at that time, even you could take a cash advance out on a credit card for funds to close. And, you can't do that now.
Yeah. They've got methods in place to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. So certainly it's changed a lot. Those were the Wild West, or the good old days. The movie The Big Short, I always really liked it because I was in the mortgage business during that time, but I watched it with Jade, and she said, this is probably a movie that we should be showing in high school today, because this is getting ready to happen again, and we're getting greedy, and all of the stuff that we said we better not forget. Seems like we've kind of put some of it at least in the back of our mind.
That's my biggest concern right now with the way the market is, and as slow as it's obviously slowed down here in Southwest Florida, but it's slowing down throughout the country. And that's when people will start to cut corners. That's when loan officers will cut corners, lenders will cut corners, realtors will cut corners, not informing their clients like they should, because they need that sale. And that has me concerned. There are other things that are happening right now with wholesalers and stuff that really has me concerned. But
the wholesale market is huge down here.
Well, it's these wholesalers that are taking people off the deeds of properties, and they call it stepping into the mortgage because they can't assume that mortgage. And I think that is going to be the next huge problem if something isn't done soon.
Yeah. The last time that I remember the housing market really showing a change, I was working for JP Morgan Chase. I was working in their home equity department, and we were making loans up to in California, for example, if you had a 740 credit score and you were employed, we could do up to $250,000, no doc, electronic evaluation, up to 100% loan to value. And maybe it was like prime plus 2. It was a really competitive thing. We started getting on conference calls with Arizona, which was where the home equity was headquartered, and they started saying things like, we're noticing a little bit of default rate out west. Nothing to really be crazy concerned about right now. We're starting to see some stuff, and we're just watching. So for right now, we're going to do like a 5% LTV cut across the board, and just make sure that our powder's dry and we're where we need to be. And then they said the next month when we got on the call, they said, we're starting to see some fraud where we made some deals that maybe we shouldn't have. And it's in Arizona and California. It's not widespread, but we're watching it. And this is, again, leaders of leaders of leaders. And then they came back one day and they said like this, all right, we're not writing anything over 75% of a drive-by appraisal. And if they have an existing line of credit, we've went ahead and locked that down and sent them a letter in the mail. So are we there yet, Mike, as far as home equity, or as far as LTV cuts? We're still doing FHA loans, but are you seeing conventional LTV cuts with condos or with second homes, investment properties? Are they drawing in a little bit?
So not yet, but I've had this conversation even with other loan officers. As we see the market slowing down and we start to get appraisals where they start to say that we have a declining market, that's when we're going to get hit. So far, we haven't had that, because I think even though people will say that we have a declining market right now because home values are dropping, that's not necessarily true. Home values are dropping because we have unrealistic expectations of what the sales price should be.
They're adjusting.
Yeah, they're adjusting. And I'm like, during COVID, you had home prices going up 20 to 30% in a year. That's not right. They should have never done that. So we're seeing, I don't know what you want to call it, a market correction or whatever, but home prices need to come down.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to be up that high. I think buyers want that to happen. Sellers obviously don't want that to happen, but I think the sellers are starting to understand that they think that they're losing money on the home. And
Right.
like, you're not losing money because that was never real to begin
Right.
with.
Yep.
You have these expectations that just aren't there.
You own Bitcoin, it went up to $100,000,
Yeah.
and you didn't sell it, and it went back down to 50,000. Nobody owes you 50 grand.
Correct.
It was
Exactly.
never
Exactly.
100,000 in your pocket. It was paper money. It
Yeah.
wasn't even paper money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a deal until someone brings the money to create a transaction, and then it's a deal. But
Correct.
yeah, I think there's a lot of that. Now, Mike, I live out in Lehigh. I'm trying to position myself to where if it comes down enough, I'd like to snag a little 2-2 in my neighborhood where I live. I just love living out there. It's city water and sewer, and I would love to, but I'm waiting patiently. And I just hope that when that time comes, that the inventory is there, that I qualify, or that the rates will be where they need to be. So I don't know what's going to happen, because I feel like the people that are on the fence, when they save a couple $1,000s on the sales price, they're going to lose it by paying the interest back to the lender. And I just think at some point, if you can make it work with the payment, like we talked about earlier, then you should just secure the property.
Yeah, and go in with a lower offer on the value. We're not going to see interest rates most likely dip into the fours.
So then we have to see short sales then, don't you think?
The only reason we saw the rates go where they did during COVID is because the government got involved. And, like Ronald Reagan said, the worst thing that you can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because not only did that drive people to say, well, you had people from New York and Illinois coming down here buying homes because they're like, well, I was planning on buying, but not for another couple of years, but I'm going to buy now because the rates are so low.
Yep.
So you had so many people buying that really did not have that intent. At one point, you even had leaders of the mortgage industry and the banking industry going to the government, telling them to stop because it was going to destroy this industry.
Yeah.
But I don't think the rates, I think we should see the rates relax maybe into the low 6s, high 5s on government loans. You're pretty much there. You could get into the high 5s on FHA and VA loans.
Mm-hmm.
Conventional loans are not that low. You're going to have, but I don't think we're going to get into those 5s with conventional loans.
And historically
anytime soon.
speaking, under 7 is a great rate.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that we have high property values right now. We have higher insurance than we've had. I do think the state needs to do something about property taxes. We haven't even talked about this, but the state sitting there saying that we're going to get rid of property taxes, I think is overzealous. I don't know that that's possible, but what I do think is possible and what they should be doing is looking at the homestead exemption. The current homestead exemption that we have, I think, started in 2008, 2009. And obviously prices were much lower then.
Yeah.
They could probably triple or quadruple the homestead exemption.
Yeah, you can do 100K.
That would make a huge difference.
And that would benefit that fixed income senior citizen who's got the small, because now you're writing off a bigger portion. Somebody's got a $3 million home, $75,000 in exemptions, not really a big deal to them, but it would be to somebody that owned a $150,000 condo in Lehigh Acres, and they get a $100,000 homestead exemption, and then some kind of a mortgage exemption, maybe if they took one out. Now we're taking care of that person, but I think we need that money though. The money's got to come from somewhere.
We have to have, for firefighters and police.
For Matthew, for him to get out there and do his work.
School. So we have to have some kind of tax. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But I do think it could be a lot less than what we're paying now. And I think that would help out home affordability. I don't think that any of that should pass down to investors. I don't think BlackRock should get any kind of deals like that.
Yeah.
But for owner-occupied homes, I think that would make a huge difference for all of us.
And on that owner-occupied home front was, kind of on that, I don't want to say first-time home buyer, but FHA buyer, someone who's trying to get in for, less money down. I wanted to ask you today, because I saw on Facebook a comment about Hometown Heroes.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you about it because last year, the majority of the residential real estate, improved real estate, so non-vacant lots that I did was an avatar of a non-U.S. citizen FHA buyer of new construction, most of them with a DAP, or I don't know if it was Hometown Heroes or there's another one that's like Florida Housing Finance. There are a lot of the down payment
there's
assistance.
a lot of down payment assistance.
Well, now FHA is not doing that for a non-U.S. citizen.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about Hometown Heroes and how that can fit, or any other DApps that you're working with that maybe could help that FHA buyer get even, more closer to the 6,600
So you can
per month.
So there's
or down payment rather.
There are a lot of down payment assistance programs, typically. And I'll probably step on some toes here. Like if you have a credit score in the 500s, to me, you shouldn't even be looking at a home.
Thank you.
Are there loans out there for you? Absolutely. But the problem is that you're going to get into a home and you think it's going to be all rainbows and unicorns, and you're going to end up losing that home if you can't figure out why your score is where it's at.
Yeah. There's a problem.
Yeah. So that being said, there are down payment assistance programs for conventional and for FHA loans. Typically, you need to have a score of 620 at minimum. I think Hometown Heroes, the last time they put it out, it was at 640. But there's no free lunch either.
Right.
You're not going to get...
You can get there. You can get to 640. If you really want to buy a home, you can get there.
Right. And it doesn't take that long, but you should prepare yourself. That's why it's so important to get pre-approved or start looking and getting through that process, getting that budget together and that sort of thing before. But, when you're looking at down payment assistance programs, there is a time and a place for all of them, but you have to understand that there's no free lunch.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to give you money. They're making that money back somehow. And one thing about Hometown Heroes, and I've even seen realtors advertising Hometown Heroes and then telling people that it's a forgivable loan when it's not a forgivable loan. And when they've been confronted on it, they've said, well, we have other loan options and that's what we'll fit them into. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's lying though.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be lying to our clients.
So I know I've done some where if you occupy for a certain amount of time, then it is forgivable. But
so Hometown Heroes is never forgivable.
You're always going to pay off.
Yeah. So if you refinance the home, if you vacate the home, or you sell the home, it has to be repaid. And understand, like, depending on property values, and if you take $35,000 on the Hometown Heroes, you could actually be underwater on that home.
Wow.
And you may not be able to refinance it when the rates do go down. So it's always something to keep in mind. Now, we have a handful of lenders that offer their own down payment assistance programs. Sometimes that down payment portion of the loan is repayable. Sometimes it's forgivable depending on the program that you want, but you're going to pay a higher interest rate on the first mortgage. And that helps. I mean, honestly, it helps
Somebody's
to pay.
Gotta pay
it helps to pay it off. However, taking one of those loans, whether it has to be paid back or it's forgivable, it still gives you that opportunity in the future to refinance it.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I did a little reindeer game back in like 99 with Nehemiah. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When it was a kind of a kooky thing, now that I'm thinking back about why this was a bad idea, because wasn't it that the seller makes a contribution?
And I'm so glad. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was asking another loan officer that has almost been in the business as long as me. And I'm like, what was that program that we had where the seller funded the down payment? And I could not for the life of me think of it. And so I tried to Google it, and Google didn't have anything on it, but that's the name of it. Yeah. So one time the sellers could actually give part of the equity as the down payment on the loan. And honestly, it was legal money laundering.
Because they gave it to so the seller gives a payment to the Nehemiah Foundation.
Correct.
The Nehemiah Foundation then feels compelled to write a check to the buyer.
Yeah.
And that's Ozarks right there, man.
That was really, really popular with FHA loans.
Yeah.
And even, back in those days, the seller could and this was for the subprime market especially, the seller could do a 20% seller carryback for the down payment on a loan. We would do the 80% first mortgage, and then the seller could forgive
Yeah,
that
they're
second
not under no
mortgage after
obligation.
closing.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was crazy.
Smart people that put that together.
Crazy times.
Might be in jail somewhere now, but that is definitely the Nehemiah.
that was-
I remember, again, being coached. This is how you get your deal done.
That was the standard practice. And all of those were legal. And then FHA came out and said no more.
And that was probably because all those people had no skin in the game, and then they just walked away from the home when hard times hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. If I look at this, I've got realistically going back to the home that's available there in Cape Coral today to buy, because we're in the business of helping people buy and sell real estate.
Right.
We want them to rent if they need to, but at the end of the day, no one's here to sell you into renting if you can't, or if you can qualify to purchase a home, and it's a good financial decision. So again, go to MikeSteeleLoans.com, get pre-qualified there on your website.
Correct. Yeah, they can. So if they go to my website, not only can they get pre-qualified there is a budget that they can link to. There's information on how to increase your credit score, information about what you should do in case of a hurricane. All of that kind of stuff is on my website. I've tried to make my website as user-friendly to things you actually need.
So, and that's MikeSteeleLoans.com. I'm just going to spell it one time because it's Mike, STEELE, loans with an S on the end.com. I'll put it in the link below in the description. Mike, we'll make sure that your website is mentioned down there. So we got the home, and now I just want to run through this scenario. So I'm looking now to buy in the Cape. The average right now is $449,000 for a 1,830 square foot home. Been sitting on the market for 94 days. The seller's ready to go, and I need an FHA loan at 675 for 30 years, and that's going to give me a principal and interest payment of $2,800 a month. Now, taxes, HOI, and PMI, I don't know, but would you say it's fair to say $3,200 all in?
Probably so, yeah.
Okay, $3,200 all in, and that's $1,000 more than it would be to rent, but you own it, and you're building equity, and you're building what will eventually be an asset, but that is not today a piggy bank, right? For what we were talking about earlier. Now, let's talk then, if we can afford the monthly payment, let's talk about getting into the home. In that instance, I need about $16,000 down payment, assuming we don't do a DAP. And then the seller can kick in 10 to 15,000 for my...
Yeah, so the seller can kick in up to 6% of the sales price going towards closing cost and buying down your interest rate. So in that particular scenario, if you're currently renting for $2,200 and your mortgage payment is going to be $3,100, $3,200, if you're not saving $1,000 a month easily every single month, you should not be buying that house.
Yeah. It's not going to get better just by having the house.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So, and over time, home ownership is going to be the way to go because at least your payments are going to be fixed. And if you're renting, your payment's going to go up when taxes and insurance on that house go up. I can guarantee, and I've had an argument with an investor, but if that investor has expenses that come up on that home, he's either built that into the current rent or it is going to be built into the rent upcoming because he has to pay that off.
Yep.
Otherwise, he's not an investor. He's a charity. So, you have to keep in mind, yes, the payment may be equal, it may even be a little bit more. But when you're buying a home, it is a forced piggy bank because every single month when you make that mortgage payment, a portion of that mortgage payment is going towards the principal balance on that loan.
Right.
And yes, it's not a lot in the beginning. It's going to be on that size of home, it's going to be a couple $100s, but that couple $100s is every single month. And you already know that your principal and interest payment will never change.
That part is set. You never have to worry about that. But we know that taxes and HOI, they're not likely to go down here in Florida. Maybe the taxes. Maybe we'll get lucky on the taxes.
Yeah, and the one thing about the taxes too, if you're homesteading it, they can only go up so much.
Right.
To where when you're renting,
they could jack the rent up as much as they want.
Yeah, and the taxes are going to go. The taxes are not capped for investors,
and they'll continue, to rise.
They'll continue to go up as long as property values go up.
Now, when you talk to, there's a certain element of sales, but there's also a certain element of consultation with your buyers when they come to you. Mike, do you have customers that come to you where you go, you're scratching your head and you go, you make great money, you can afford this house, but when I look at your bank statements, you're spending everything on fast food. You're going to the dispensary twice a week. You're going to, I don't know, you're going out on to the casino. You're just not managing your money. Do you ever look at somebody and go, you can get this, but you just don't get it? Is that something that you do, or do you step back and let them be a big boy or a big girl?
You have to walk a very fine line when it comes to that, to help people understand. Like, to me, if you're making a 6-figure income and you're struggling for a down payment, something's wrong.
Now, are you gonna try to get into that with them, or are you just gonna go home and say, wow, this guy today I talked to, I hope he gets it right?
Unfortunately, the age that I'm at, stuff just comes out.
Yeah.
And I will tell them, I probably have told more people not to refinance than to refinance. Mm-hmm. I know loan officers that, man, if I could save them $30 or $40 or $50 a month, I'm going to refinance. And I'm like, yeah, but
it's going to cost you $6,000.
Yeah, they're going backwards.
Yeah.
And I just won't do that.
Yeah. Would you tell that person to consider a home equity line of credit, or would you tell them just tighten your belt a little bit, straighten up?
Depending on my relationship with them, I would tell them.
If you wanted to talk to them again,
I would tell them to put on the big boy pants.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I do tell people I've been in more credit card debt than most people I talk to. And there was a time when, 30 plus years ago, I got those notices in the mail, final payment due. I had no money. Your electricity is going to get turned off. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, my sons are too young to remember, but they ate a lot of mac and cheese and hamburger helper.
Hamburger helper makes a great meal.
Yeah. And that's just the way it was until I could get myself out. And was it hard to go through that? It was horrible to go through that. However, it was the best thing that I could have done. And that's where I think people, they don't take that responsibility. Because I see it all the time. In fact, I did a video on it. The average American right now spends close to $350 a month going out to eat.
That seems low.
Now,
I've got a lot of kids, so just going out one time around is expensive.
That seems high to me.
Well, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it just seems like if I stop at Wendy's for biggie bags for 5 people, right? And I'm going biggie bags, not even getting the meal, the number 6 that I really want. And then I'm going to be at $47, $50.
But most likely, most families can't really afford that. They think
they can't. Well, you just think you can because it's the death of 1,000 cuts.
If you go to the gas station, what was the average person spends $5 to $10
get a Red Bull
over their gas on stuff at the gas station. Gas stations don't have convenience stores there for no reason. Right. They know that they can get you.
Yeah. You'll never get a bargain.
And that's where people just spend money willy-nilly, to where, like, my generation, if you went out to Dairy Queen, that was a big deal as a kid. If you went to, they don't have them now, but Bonanza or Ponderosa, which is a steakhouse.
Ponderosa,
that was, family dinner is over. And that was a huge deal. That was almost like a holiday.
I can tell you, I grew up in Indianapolis as a very, very little boy. And I remember one of my earliest memories was going to a Ponderosa and just being really excited about all the food there. But, I know that part of the challenge is that when you were doing that, you were going to the bank to cash your paycheck. You were keeping out enough money so that you could go have your entertainment. When that cash was gone, you were done until the next payday. And now all I have to do, I don't even have to pull a card out. I just tap my phone and go. Yeah. And so now we got Mickey D's. We're going to stop at Dairy Queen. We're going to grab and they're just they're just $10,
yeah. All these companies, they're not stupid. They know,
they know.
If they can, even Amazon, they know that you will spend more because you're not spending real money to you.
Subscriptions in general, Netflix, Amazon Prime,
and that's
Hulu.
where people, I think, even with their home, yes, I do agree that home prices are too high right now. I do agree that interest rates are a little bit too high right now, but that's not always the problem. It's the car, it's the car's insurance, it's going out to eat.
Yeah.
We have a lifestyle now that just isn't conducive to the income that we have right now.
For me, it's living in a world with money, not having money, but still wanting to live with them. I mean, I live in paradise and my job is to serve those with money so that they can enjoy their life in paradise, but I still want to pretend too. I still want to go out to eat. I still want to have, I want to have a bottle of wine. But the thing is that, and you can do it, but
You can't do it every night.
and you can't run it on a 30% interest
Yeah.
credit card because that you just get killed, man. That $100 bottle of wine is like $400 before you even got it paid off.
Yeah. I had a client purchasing his first home, did not have a job. His dad was going to co-sign on the loan, and he bought a $500,000 condo. And his dad could afford it, which is all well and good.
That's
but
awesome.
I'm like, what are you teaching your son?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a job. He's in college, and he needs a $500,000 condo. No, he doesn't.
No. Maybe a duplex.
Yeah.
With another classmate or something.
And there's a great opportunity for people right now. You could buy a duplex with an FHA loan with 3.5% down and have somebody help pay your mortgage.
And you don't even have to commit fraud. FHA is totally cool with you renting out the other half
exactly.
of it. They want you to. They know that it's going to secure the payment.
Exactly.
That's a solid play right now. In Lehigh Acres, I'm sure Cape Coral probably has a little bit too, but the multifamily boom in Lehigh Acres, specifically on the eastern side, there's a lot of duplexes that are sitting empty where people have come in and speculated, and now they've got property taxes went up, insurances went up, their note that, the financing they, took it at a higher rate than what they wanted to. And so now they're trying to get $2,800 per side in a brand new duplex. And that's just ridiculous.
And if you want to build a residential portfolio, that's the best way to start.
Yeah. Because the old school, the shining example was always you buy the starter home, you live in it for a little bit, you take the equity from that as a down payment. That's the old thing. But if you did it with a multifamily, you're getting there way faster.
Correct. Yeah.
And then when you move out, now you have two tenants already.
Correct,
You have two rental properties instead of one. It's
Correct,
a definite, and for my kids, I would consider pushing that because I have my older group, they're pretty close in age. So it becomes something where we start going, guys, you really could go in together, buy this place, live in each side. And then when one of you gets married or whatever and decides to move on, then rent that side out. And you've got something now that really is an investment.
Yeah. Once you've established that investment history, then the next home you can go into and you can buy a conventional loan with and do that same thing and start building that. You just have to make sure that if you want to walk down that road, that you are prepared to be a landlord.
Yeah. And that's not for everyone either. Just like we talk about, it's homeownership might not be for everyone. Being a landlord is not for everyone. There's solutions though. You can hire great property managers that for a percentage of the rent will take care of all the problems that you have. But again, when the margins get tight and get squeezed, that's one of those things that you might look to eliminate. And then now you're the one fixing the broken toilet Saturday night because it's flooding on the floor.
Correct. Yep.
So great conversation on that. I wanted to just get a real look though of what's going on in the market. Now you look for referrals from top real estate agents in the area. You look for referrals from investment bankers that have clients that need advice. And you've seen, if you're like me as a title insurance agent, my business is down about 20% year over year. And that's a real look. What is happening? What are you seeing just in the overall market? And more importantly, because that's a anecdotal question. I know what you're seeing in the market. What are you doing as Mike Steele to support those people that are out there, that the realtors that aren't selling? Like, what are you doing to help drive their business? What do you do as a partner?
So I do a lot on social media, trying to get to buyers first, and then I can refer those buyers that are already approved to my realtor agents.
That's a cherry deal. I mean, if you can do that, that's a cherry deal.
So, I mean, that is something that I do. Also trying to coach realtors to let them know that this industry is changing probably faster than we all think, with artificial intelligence, with ChatGPT, and a lot of realtors don't want to use it. They're scared of it. And I think that's why it's probably one of the best times to get into this industry as a realtor, because there are so many people that are not willing to put themselves out there.
Yep.
That if you do put yourselves out there and you start branding yourself, a lot of realtors are out there. Well, I work for whatever
Yep.
office they
Yep.
work for, and that's what they brand, and they need to be branding themselves,
I
just
agree.
like you do with Title Adam. I mean, it's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um,
Same with you,
yeah,
MikeSteeleLoans.com.
yeah. I mean, you need to build your personal brand and make a difference, and that's where I think a lot of people in the industry are not doing that.
Yeah.
I do weekly videos that I send out to realtors trying to give them ideas. I do attend open houses when I have time. So yeah, I do a lot of those things. Honestly, I'm not one that is going to wine and dine realtors because ultimately that gets us nothing.
Yeah.
I do, I do have, a life with kids and grandkids and stuff like that. So, I focus on the service that I can provide.
Mm-hmm.
The realtors that I work with, they know that they can reach me day and night. They know on the weekends they're going to be able to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
They know I always have my computer with me.
Yeah. You're on social media. I see you on the grind because we're on Facebook, and then I follow you on TikTok as well. And I know you stay local and stay active. And so I think that's one of the best ways you can support them is to be available. You've got the technology on your website now where people can go and start their pre-qual process. You've got resources for them there at MikeSteeleLoans.com. And I think they've got somebody that they can reach out to and just have a real chat with about what's going on in the market. And,
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately you can get a loan from any Tom, Dick, and Harry on the corner. It's really a matter of, are they getting the service that they need? Is the communication there? Are they being treated fairly? Are they getting a good rate? Because there's a lot of people out there and say rates don't matter. And, oh, it's only 0.25% higher. Mm-hmm. Oh, the closing costs are only $1,000 higher. I'm like, well, that's a lot of money. Yeah. I'm not going to be paying your mortgage, and the realtor's not going to be paying your mortgage after it closes. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you get a fair deal.
Yeah. I think that says it all. I mean, anyone that would try to convince you through a value proposition that you should pay more money for the same product without getting something is really just selling you something you don't need anyways. I won't get too opinionated on that, but let's say that if all goes well, then it goes like this. You reach out, you being the listener who's listening, and thanks for hanging with us here in the house, you'll reach out to MikeSteeleLoans.com. You'll receive a solid pre-approval, and he will tell you at that time where you want to be. He'll refer you to a top agent here in the marketplace, or if you have your own, he'll work with them happily. And then you will go and you'll find a house and you will contract on it. And once you contract on it, you're going to list Title Adam on page 1 of the contract, so you let everybody know you're tagging me in, and I'm going to take you right through closing. I'm going to get you to the closing table faster and with less stress. And that's just a fact. That's not a motto. I live by it, and I can back it up with results. So if you're buying, selling, building, refinancing, or doing any kind of a deal in Florida, tag in Title Adam, but there are steps that you're going to take. So tag me in anytime, and depending on where you are in the process, I'm going to loop you right back around to MikeSteeleLoans.com, because you got no business going out looking at homes if you don't have a solid pre-approval behind you. And if you're a friend to a realtor, and like I know Mike is, he won't let a realtor drive around opening doors all day, burning gas for somebody that's not pre-approved. It's not fair.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody.
Somebody told me one time that you're traveling and you want to just have some fun and get a nice meal, that you should call a real estate agent while you're in town and say you're looking at homes, and let them take you out to a nice lunch, let them show you some beautiful homes on the water if you're in California, and then just ghost them like everybody else does. So real good buyers take good care of the people that take care of them, and that's your lender, that's your title insurance agent, it's your real estate professional, it's your home inspector, it's your homeowner's insurance person. Those are people that you want to take care of, and you can take care of them best by going through the steps and the processes that will get you to where you need to be faster and with less stress. And that's really what it's all about. And as just a note, I never want to put out any content, Mike, without touching on this. Fraud is so pervasive in the real estate industry, in mortgage, in Florida. And you and I have both worked at multiple companies. We've sat at different seats at the closing table over the years, and we've been very fortunate to do it. But the reality is today, it's not a matter of if we're going to get hit with fraud, it's a matter of when. And so I always like to just say, if you see something, say something. And I know that you're working on your side with your team to prevent fraud. But as a title insurance agent, I'm a bulldog on it. And my team is going to be, we're going to be fine tooth combing the deal to make sure that the seller actually owns the home, that the buyer is who they say they are. If there's a company involved, I want to know who's got the authority to sign on behalf of the company. We're going to do the due diligence. But it takes a village when it comes to fraud. And I just always want to make sure to say that out there. It is everyone's responsibility to make sure that we don't write bad deals.
Amen.
So I just felt like I needed to say that, because right now fraud is just happening so much that you can't oversell it.
From lending, we have a problem with occupancy fraud.
Right.
And that's where people are telling the loan officer that they're going to occupy the home and they really have no intention. And the only reason they're doing that is to get a lower interest rate. I had a client that actually did that to me. And he was caught after closing. Or, they're getting investment loans.
I was going to say, it's not just the rate, it's the amount that they have to put down.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or they're getting some of these investment loans where it's just going off the rental income from the property because they don't have any
Projected.
income. And they're saying that they're going to, they're just going to rent that property out, and they end up owner occupying it. And that's also fraud. Even though you're occupying the property you bought, it's still fraud because you're occupying it.
You said you were going to generate. Wow, Mike.
When you said you weren't going to.
Meaning that the investor is less secure because you're not generating revenue to make that payment.
Correct. And the investor ends up being more liable because those types of loans technically are business loans.
Yeah.
They're not residential loans. And there's different laws that govern all of those loans.
That is a really great point.
So, it's occupancy fraud is really
I have never thought of occupancy fraud as taking out a business loan to buy an income producing property, turning out that you want to live in it afterwards, and that being fraud. But absolutely, because the investor that made that loan said, well, you're going to be able to get, not only are you going to be able to get, you're willing to get money that will make this a really make sense deal for us. Wow, that's really enlightening. That'll make a great clip.
And one thing that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac they used to audit, like one every 10 files, one every 50 files.
Yep.
Now it's pretty much every file.
Wow.
They have people here, and I know people here that their side hustle is to drive around and see different properties.
Wow.
Who's living there? What are the license plates?
When they're performing? Or only when they go into default?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
When they're performing. And when they go into default, because not only that, because then if they're in default, then they go back to the loan officer, they go back to the underwriter, and we want documentation on, why you made this decision. Were you involved in it?
Yeah.
So, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and I saw in a local Facebook group recently where somebody said, I took this picture of someone out in their car in front of my house taking a picture, and I want, and all the paranoia opens up on Facebook, and it could be the property appraiser looking to get more money from you, or did you do an unpermitted fence that they're looking to bust you on? It could be your insurance company looking to see if you actually put a new roof on like you were supposed to, but could be somebody just looking to make sure that you actually live in that house. I honestly, I always thought that was one of those things, Mike, where they said, if you pay, you stay. If you don't, you won't. And if you made some kind of a goof, it's really only going to come up when you default. But they have to check it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not saying that they're always going to catch it. And that's one of the biggest issues I have with, some of the wholesaling scams that I'm seeing right now is that they are violating the occupancy.
Yeah, that mortgage that they signed specifically said non-assignable. If they want to buy it, they need to get their own financing.
Yeah.
And so the investor is basically saying, just hide me. I don't know, the term you said earlier was add me into the.
Yeah, they're saying that they're stepping into the loan.
We're going to make a mirrored, basically we'll make a mirrored deal to where all of the terms of your loan are the terms of my new loan, and I'm just going to make the payment direct. It's fraud.
Yeah,
there's no real way.
Fraud. They are using a.
They're avoiding the acceleration.
They're using a law that was put in place in like 1982, 1983, but they're bending that law to meet their needs, and that's not what the law says. Eventually, I think they will be caught. But the problem I also see is they'll say, we're going to put a 7-year balloon on this, and then we'll refinance it or pay it off. Well, you're stepping into a loan that has a 3% interest rate. So in 7 years, if the interest rate's 6%, you're not going to refinance it.
Right.
So you get a higher interest rate.
Right.
And what they can do is just say, hey, we don't want that property anymore. We're going to deed it back to you.
Wow.
And when they deed it back to them, then that person has the issue of, one, how do I pay for this now? And two, they haven't owned that property, so they can't refinance that property,
Oh, wow.
even though they own the debt on that property. So it's very complicated.
Yeah, I think that that's one of those things where we're probably going to learn as we go on that, because there's a lot of assignment, a lot of wholesaling, a lot of that going on. And I don't mind an investor going to someone and saying, it's worth this to me. I'll buy it right now. No qualms, no inspections, no problem. And it's going to leave enough meat on the bone that I'm going to turn around and sell it. It's no different if you walked into Pawn Stars and you took a gold necklace. They're not going to give you full price for it. They're going to want to make some money on it. So I don't have a problem with wholesalers. The assigning is what really makes me nervous, because I feel like it gets real slippery when people start moving in and out of contracts while we're trying to close them up. It's really
when you take that current owner off the deed and yet they still own the debt.
Yeah.
That is the problem. Like if you had a wholesaler that is going to be in a second position to that current owner's first position, I don't have a problem with that at all. But when you're taking somebody out of ownership of that property, but you keep them on that debt, that's
wow. Yeah, because the title would still be clouded by the debt, but you'd still have the deed in your name. So it's not a good scenario.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be something that we learn as we go. And probably in 2040, they're going to go, remember when they were doing all the assigning and the wholesaling and all the sub-twos and all those kind of deals? Yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. That was like the Nehemiah Grant program, it turns out.
There are ways to do it correctly. But a lot of what you see on social media,
they're cutting corners.
Yeah.
Trying to save money.
And eventually it will come back to bite them.
Yeah. I know there's been a couple that
it will bite the homeowners.
There's a couple that have come to us that we've actually looked at and said, I don't think we want to do this one. And just if it's not done, if we can't do it right, then we don't want to do it.
Right.
Because that just opens us up for risk. And I'm writing an insurance policy on it to indemnify everybody. So, gosh, fraud in the industry is just so crazy. I deal with a lot of times, a bona fide seller, and they're out of the country, and we're dealing with, documents being sent by email, scanned copies. And it's a really, really tough thing to find out. Are you dealing with the seller that has the right to sell the property? And we take steps. There's certain steps that you can take. One thing that's big right now, Mike, is that they'll take your ID and they'll have you take a picture of the front and of the back, because you got to get the code on the back. And then they'll say, okay, now take a selfie. And the selfie is going to identify 100 points on your face that it's undeniably you, and you can't really get around it. That doesn't work all the time. And then they have knowledge-based assessment where they'll ask you, Mike, what color car did you own in 1992? And don't get this wrong. That's all they'll tell you. You got to get it right. So we take steps, but I tell you, if I get you to the closing table and we get it closed up, then I feel really comfortable moving forward. But the loan stuff, that's crazy, man, because a lot of times the lender will just slam a package on us and say, here's short instructions on what you need to do, where you need to sign, notarize. I don't know the conversations that you've had with the buyer.
Right.
I go through each document and I tell them, this is what this document means that you're going to sign. This says that you're going to occupy it as your primary residence. And I'm shaking my head, and they're shaking their head. But the truth is, I don't know. Now, there have been times where I've been sitting at the closing table and people have just about blown it over marital status. And they'll do like a look at each other like they're getting ready to get divorced or, something like that. But I don't, generally, once we get to the closing package, if I've got verified that I'm working with the right buyer and seller, you verified that all their income and assets are right and the property value is where it needs to be, we're ready to close that puppy up tight and get everybody paid and get everybody down the road. Now, we, as part of the title side, once you sign the loan docs with Mike, I'm going to take them and record them in the public records and make sure that they're effective and they're right. And so, Mike, do you go to your closings?
I did before COVID. And then once COVID hit, you weren't, they didn't want you at the closings. Yeah. And I've gotten out of that habit, but a lot of my buyers aren't at closings.
Well, we love to have people come into our offices. We've got a beautiful office here on Corkscrew Road in Estero, and we've got one in Bonita as well. We'd love to have people come in. Times have changed, and people are now sending wire transfers from their cell phone instead of having to make appointments at the bank. and they're doing remote online notary from work so that they don't have to leave. And the business is changing a lot. But I ask you that because a lot of times the realtor will come in and the lender will come in, but sometimes they don't. And I always pivot so that, if we do a deal together and you don't show up, I'm going to tell people, does your doctor go with you to the dentist when you go to get your cavity filled, or does he just know that you're in good hands when you go there? And that's so, but if you do come in, then I'm going to make a big deal about it and say, that's my guy coming in for the closing. But I love when you come in because I like to take a picture and, just have a chance to meet you and see you. And if I did a good job, it's always a spot for me to maybe get a quick pat on the back, because we love what we do and we're fortunate to do what we do. But every time we do a transaction, there's only usually one party that actually directed the deal to us, whether it's the realtor that sent you the buyer to get pre-approved, or they, trusted me with the title insurance piece of it. And so in that deal, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5 different people that didn't choose us, that are yoked with us. And then now we have an opportunity to make an impression so that next time they have a choice, they would choose Mike Steele or they would choose Title Adam. And that's a huge compliment when they do it. But I can tell you that if you ever find yourself as a non-directing mortgage lender, or if you find yourself as a non-directing real estate agent walking through my front doors, you're going to walk right into open arms from the time that you get to the front desk. We're going to be so excited to work with you and just to share with you what we can do to make your life better, because the reality is you got to do your job. I can't do your job for you. And I might find somebody that's interested in buying or selling, and maybe I could throw you a bone. But the truth is you got to do your job and generate those deals. And then you've got to trust Mike. You got to trust me and my team to close them up. And that's what we're here to do. And I would say if we had a good podcast today, then we were able to talk about MikeSteeleLoans.com. We were able to talk a little bit about who he is as a person so that you feel that you can trust him when it comes time to make one of the biggest financial decisions in your life. And hey, maybe you remember to tag in Title Adam the next time you're buying, selling, building, or refinancing in Florida, because that's what we do. And for my friends and my family and the listeners that are up in Michigan, Reputation First Title would love to have an opportunity to help you as well, because we also have that arm up in Michigan. So
that's great.
That's my speech. That's what I've got for you. And I really loved having you on. I've got more that I wanted to cover with you, to be honest with you, Mike, but I also know that we're going to do this again. If we do it right, we're going to do it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I would love to have you back on.
For anybody out there, even if you don't use me, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me.
You want to drop? What's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it your email, just your website?
My website or my phone number is 239-571-6943. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
I didn't want to drop it, without asking you, because just in case. So definitely reach out to Mike if you have any questions. If it's a not now, then he'll let you know that. But it sounds like he's got a spirit to win, and it's never going to be a no. It's going to be a not yet. And you need someone. If you find yourself in that situation, you're going to need a Sherpa to get you through that process, and take someone with patience and someone with skill. And Mike's got it all. So, Mike, thank you again for coming in.
I really appreciate it.
We're going to wrap it.
Okay.
That's a wrap on Title Adam in the House. Subscribe, share, and tag in Title Adam when it's time to close. You want to be a guest? Book your spot. The link's in the show notes. Welcome to Title Adam in the House, the podcast where Florida real estate gets real. Buyers, sellers, builders, lenders. If you're in the game, then you belong in the house. Let's get you to the closing table faster and with less stress. Let's